Hey, True Believers, Englentine here with a comic book origin / review of Adam, Legend of the Blue Marvel. I was not very aware of this character, tell you the truth. I had stopped reading Marvel for a while. That's when he came around. I did a video about Monica Rambeau, the shameful history, the racist history of Monica Rambeau, and a lot of comments brought him up. So I was like, okay, I better check this guy out. So usually with comic book origins, I've already read the book at one point in time, and I'm able to pull humor from it, and it's kind of a roast. This is going to be more of a straight-up review because this is the first time I've read through it. I have read through the entire series. There are still going to be some jokes here because there's some silly things happening in this book, but overall, it's going to be a straight-up review. Oh, wait, one thing. The guy who wrote it, Kevin Graveau, I think. He's got some serious geek cred, man. He was in the Underworld series, played the Lycan. Obviously, he plays the big guy in everything he's in. But he also did the voice of Solomon Grundy for Batman and the Super Skrulls. So this man, he's legit. So let's see what he comes up with. Okay, so we're going to take a look at the cover. I believe it's Matt Broom. Same guy who does the interiors, and so the eye is drawn into the center of the frame where we see a cape and an arm. This is not good, gang. The font is bad. It's boring. You got Bullet Head, the villain. You have no discerning features to. It's just a dull look. Obviously, Ms. Marvel's there for sex appeal. Iron Man's there for character recognition, and it really does look like a buddy cop comic book between Blue Marvel and Yellow Jacket. It is not a good design. And then Random Soldier Guy, of course, if you've read the book already, you know that that's the villain in his civilian identity. Now look at the cover that they chose for the back of this trade paperback, and you'll see this is actually what needs to be on the front. It tells the story of what's in the book. It lets you know who the central figure is. This is a decent cover. It's not a great artist rendition, in my opinion, but it would work a lot better. As it is, sorry gang, this is a very generic, very dull comic book cover. Okay, now get rid of the cover. I've got to say I like the way the book opens, because in one page, in 4 panels, we're given the situation. There is a villain that the Avengers are having a hard time defeating. S.H.I.E.L.D's evacuated New York. Here are the players that are going to be your Avengers for the story. You got the Wasp, Wonder Man, Black Widow, Yellow Jacket, Iron Man, and Ms. Marvel. We'll meet some new characters as well as we go on. A lot of information is given on this first page, which is something we don't see a lot, and I kind of appreciate that. Especially as the battle expands, we have Ares, Sentry, the She-Hulk involved, and the villains yelling, "You're wasting your time," which makes Ares say, "Hey, we are not wasting time by saving people," and Sentry yells, "You will fall," and then gives us one of the more embarrassing sound effects in the book. So the battle rages with the unnamed foe, who continues to say things like, "Oh, I'm trying to lead you into paradise," and such like that. This angers Ares, of course, and he says he'll send him to paradise, and claims that, of course, he's a god, and the villain says, "I am power incarnate, and I am no god," and takes care of Ares. But to be honest, this entire opening gambit just seems to be, this guy we're up against is really tough. And the next page, you have Iron Man even saying, "Hey, who are you? And what do you want?" He just says, "I want to bring salvation to the planet." To which Iron Man says, "Well, that's insane," instead of, "Okay, well, what's your ideas?" I'm just kidding. Of course, it's a comic book. Nobody's ever going to be saying that. However, the real purpose of this page is the panel right here. "Fool, if the Blue Marvel couldn't stop me, what chance have any of you?" This is punctuated by the fact that almost immediately after he says that line, he's transported away. Cut to another splash page and credit page where we actually learn that the villain's name is Animan, and he's still being vague in his threats. "It's the only way they'll understand, believe me." So there's a glaring problem with this book in the beginning, especially right here, and that is there is no now. It's very much a book that's written for the trade, and you see it in the dialogue. I'm going to read the dialogue in just a moment here, but it's so very sparse, and the bad guy is so vague. It's almost like they had no idea of what he was doing, until they were in the middle of the story. Because at the beginning, wow, it's not very good, guys. On the other page, the bad guy, Anti-Man, says, "It's the only way they'll understand, believe me." And it carries over. The only way. And then 2 panels of him flying into a building with a sound effect taking up one whole panel. And, of course, Blue Marvel saying, "Please don't do this. They've done nothing to you, yada, yada." Now, and I'm not complaining about the fight scene. People know comic books have fight scenes, but this is literally maybe 2-3 panels spread out into 2 pages. It is so written for the trade that the story becomes very thin. And then Anti-Man, who we find out at the bottom of the page, his name is Connor, after all of this talk, this vague talk about how he is really wanting to save humanity, decides he's going to kill them because... or kill people because they are selfish. They only care for themselves, even though Blue Marvel cares for them. So we really need to know the villain's motivation at this point, because it has been all over the place. Here's the closest thing we get in this issue to what they want to do when Anti-Man says, "No, Adam, my mind has never been clearer. Help me to make them see as well. We can't force the world to be what it should be." And then, of course, they clash. It has to happen naturally, not through acts of terror, but by example. That's what heroes do, he says as he hits them. Very sparse dialogue, and that doesn't even explain what they're talking about. Obviously, he's talking about take the world over in order to save it, or that's what I'm getting from this. But once again, it's very vague, very generalized dialogue. Okay, so we get a little tough talk from I was about to say Blue Falcon. That's how old I am, gang. Blue Falcon. Yes, we do get a little tough dialogue from the Blue Marvel here as he's like, "Okay, whatever you've brought on, you brought on yourself. Hurrah!" And he jumps after his friend who he hit. Now, once again, though, we're getting 2 panels filled with him flying through a window, one for the sound effect itself. This is really not a 5-issue story, guys. They could easily have dropped this to 4, maybe 3 even, just based on how sparse the dialogue is. Look at this. Once again, there's just not much to it. And in all honesty, I don't know about you guys, but I'm not feeling the dramatic weight of it as it goes. And it's mainly because we're not being let in. We're not given any information about who our characters are. We're just thrown right into the middle of this fight. I am always going to stand by these words, but in order for us to care about the action, we first must care about the character. And I'm sorry, but telling us the name and the powers isn't characterization. It's just name and powers. The only reason why we know Anti-Man is the villain in this particular instance is because Iron Man fought him. That's it. That's all the information we have right now. This, however, is an excellent scene because with very few words, you actually do understand how important Blue Marvel is just by seeing that he's the one that the citizens are concerned about. Blue Marvel and Anti-Man are just fell into the earth and nobody's coming up and they're worried. Is Blue Marvel hurt? He can't be dead. He can't be dead. And that tells you almost everything you need to know about how the world sees the Blue Marvel. Excellent scene, this one. And we see the citizenry call out, and they see somebody come up. It's Blue Marvel, and they're like, "Blue Marvel, Blue?" And they stop, because there they see the Blue Marvel, his mask ripped open to reveal a black man. So obviously, it was meant to keep it a secret that Adam's a black guy, and unfortunately, they kept it a secret from the readers. I think if we met him beforehand and got to know him just a little bit, we would have cared about the fight. And I'll talk a little bit more about this, what my ideas would have been at the end of the video, but I really do believe that the story suffers from keeping this from the reader when we're not surprised by a black guy being this powerful. We've seen it before. The people of 1962 in the story here, absolutely, I can understand that. The mask, the whole 9 yards, but it should have been revealed to us so we would have gotten to know the character a little bit more. I have to admit, I hate identity politics. Absolutely freaking hate them. So when I first read this page, the next one coming up, I read it as if, oh, damn white people, they all bad. And I was like, oh, come on. You know, even back then, There were good, there were bad. But then when I got over myself, I read it again and realized there's no hate here. There absolutely isn't. As a matter of fact, some of them are absolute morose because of what they think needs to be done. And that is, this elevated the book to me because I had to remember that at the time, the words used, and I will not use them here because I could get a strike, were the common nomenclature. They were not the bad words to be used when describing black people. It's just the way it was. And these are not people who are mad. These are people who are sad and worried about what the future brings. As you can see, they're here, they're looking at the photo, and they're talking about him. And it goes to say, this gentleman is the Blue Marvel, America's Blue Marvel, the magnificent master of might, the man of marvels, the blue bomber of battle. And then, of course, he says, you know, another word for black person that I will definitely get struck for if I say, so I will not. What kind of intel do we have, Mr. Secretary? Bits of his mask were torn, revealing different parts of his face. We ran this through military RMI protocols and got a match. Adam Bernard Brashear won a handful of medals in Korea. Graduated magna cum laude from Cornell in '54, electrical engineering, PhD, theoretical physics. Definitely not your average. Once again, I'm not going to say that, even though for the time, it wasn't bad. For now, it could get me struck. Brashear, Adam Brashear, why do I know that name? Are you kidding? Jack, he was an All-American fullback from Cornell. Scored 5 touchdowns against Harvard in '53. And so far, it's been handled with a light hand. It's not very heavy-handed. They're not like, oh, we got to get him now because he lied. There really are weighing problems, at least for this first page. Let's move on and see how it turns out. And then the fear starts kicking in. And of course, hey, you know, it's the American government. They have to think about every contingency. As a matter of fact, I remember hearing once that we have a contingency if we need to invade the country of Chad. So it's everything. So once again, it's not being racist here. It's just being the government. It's being what they do. And they're talking about his power levels. And if things go tits up, what should we do? That kind of thing. And of course, the next day, Adam has a government car at his house. And they're saying, come along with us. Is this going to take long? And the guy says, don't worry about it. There's nothing to worry about. It will only take as long as the president needs you. And then there's a flashback to Korea where we see that Adam's convoy got hit. He worries about his friend Connor and notices an ambush, picks up a gun, and manages to save his entire troop, which leads us to exactly who's telling this particular story. And we see it's basically a racist general. Thankfully, the president and his advisors are not having any of it. I can't repeat what the general says without getting a strike. And I appreciate that. Now, here's the big question. In the golden age of Marvel, there were superheroes. Now, would the president also ask the white superheroes? Because you have to think about it. Yeah, sure, Captain America, fine, but you know that they talked about Namor. You know they should talk about the Wizard. What could they do about him? And, you know, all sorts of characters, anybody who displays superpowers. You have to understand that the government should have a contingency to take them down. Of course, here you go. They're talking about socio-political, basically racism. They're talking about racism with a guy who's as powerful as Superman, where actually we're finding out later from what I read, he's more like the Molecule Man, as a matter of, you know, with the powers he's got. So we're talking about somebody immensely more powerful than, say, the Wizard or Captain America or something. So, yeah, you got to think the government really does need to look into this kind of thing, white or black. And so we meet a young Senator Kelly who's trying to tell the president, look, we're on the precipice of the civil rights movement here, and people are going to get scared if they see a guy with this kind of power, a black guy with this kind of power flying around. They're going to get scared. And there was an instant where he even saved orphans and some white people threw bottles at him. So maybe he shouldn't be out there running about with his superpowers while we're trying to get these bills passed. And then Senator Kelly explains there's actually some black people out there who expect him to lead them through a white genocide, and they're mad that he hasn't done that yet. Of course, the general spouts off his racism, and the president goes, he's caught between two worlds. And then laments that for all the stuff he's done for the country, he can't even have a ham sandwich in a cafe in his own town. And then, of course, he says, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I just wanted to see if I remember the words. Do you realize that this conversation, this gathering probably wouldn't happen at all if we had done more sooner? We could have taken down the white and colored only signs years ago, but we didn't. We could have abolished Jim Crow completely, but again, we didn't. But now that a colored man has come along who can stand up to us, we become paranoid, frightened children. Then this next bit of dialogue is one of those things where it's like, ooh, that sounds great, but if you think about it, it's nothing. It's like when you get one of those politicians, usually Democrat, steps up and says, and we need to end racism. It's like, no shit, Sherlock. You know, they're saying that just to get that rah-rah moment, but it absolutely means nothing because, you know, they're not going to do anything about it. So anyway, he goes on about and says, well, Rome wasn't built in a day, Jack, and Kennedy says, yeah, but if you were the one that wasn't allowed at the water fountains, would you think it's good enough? Well, you're the president. It's your decision. No, it's the world's decision. The whole world needs to, of course the world needs to change. It's always needed to change. Forever and a day. And in 3,000 years, there's going to be something where people are going to go, wow, the world needs to change. And basically, a character that has so far been written pretty intelligently just gave up responsibility. And I'm sorry, if you're waiting for the other guy to change when it comes to all of this kind of crap, you're going to be waiting forever. So the president has him over. They start talking. Of course, it's small talk about football and such like that until the president gets down to business and says, we both know why we're here. My grandfather used to tell me about these signs that said Irish need not apply. And Brashear says, but they don't say that now, do they, sir? I'll get right to the point. The world's afraid of you, Mr. Brashear. They have visions of a vengeful, superpowered black guy, I'm not going to say the word, taking over the world. Naturally, Brashear gets mad at this, and he ends up asking the president, what about you? Are you afraid? And this is how the president answers. Everyone is afraid of people or things they don't understand, and from my experience, they really don't want to understand. Ignorance isn't bliss. It's familiar. And unfortunately, there's comfort in that. And so Brashear asks him, so how do we educate them, sir? Well, first, Brashear, why don't you ask him to answer the damn question? Because he totally dodged the hell out of that one, didn't he? Just saying. That's one of those things I see in movies a lot and I read in books a lot where it's like, okay, now why don't you just, like I said, answer the question? And then, of course, Kennedy says that he knows a lot of people didn't think he was supposed to be in the White House because he's Irish, and they could be trying to get rid of him. And Brashear says, well, what are you trying to tell me, sir? A politician prides himself on being subtle. I could take it, sir. I'm asking you to cease all your activities as Blue Marvel, effective immediately. We can't have you operating anymore. And Brashear asks for how long. This is the best I can do for you. And he gives him the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Once again, not answering the question of how long. It's the highest honor that can be bestowed upon a civilian for his or her undying humanitarian efforts for, and Brashear says it's been an honor, sir. And Jack Kennedy says he'll have a car take him back home. No, thank you, sir. I think I'll walk. And we see him leaving the hospital while the specter of the blue, I was about to say Blue Falcon again, the Blue Marvel is hanging over him. And he says, you did the right thing, Jack. It was the only, not now, Bobby, please. How can it ever be right to tell a man he can't be who he is? I only pray that we ever need him again. If we ever need him again, he'll find it in his heart to forgive us. And it says to be continued. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the very first appearance of the Blue Marvel. Not the Blue Falcon, as I've tried to say about 8 times today, but the Blue Marvel. So, in all honesty, I didn't think it was a bad book. And I like I said, the cover sucks, but what's on the inside is all right. You can really tell that this is not a full comic book. This is a message. He had a message to tell, and he created the character of the Blue Marvel to tell it. The action sequences have no place in this book. I understand you need something to reveal Blue Marvel, but that's all of this was there for. The rest of it's gravy. What was wanted here is the exploration of what if a Superman existed in 1950s, 1960s, except he was black. How would the racist react? And unfortunately, it's a premise that they want to carry on past modern day. And there's questions. Wait a second. You saw people like Power Man and Black Panther and other black superheroes come about. Why did you stay underground? Anytime you retcon a character like that, it really does lead to these kind of questions, and they really just touched upon them. They didn't really answer them, unfortunately, because they had that premise. He's Superman, people are racist, what are you going to do? Works back then, not so much now. Not in the Marvel Universe. At first, I was going to do a bit of an if I wrote my ideas on how they should have approached. Otherwise, I think actually it can fit its own video. So maybe I'll do like that because it's about damn time I bring back if I wrote. Anywho, we really should have been introduced to Adam Brashear. He is not before the big reveal because we aren't really introduced to him too much in this story. People talk about him, but they don't talk about him as far as who he is, other than that one scene where people are like, hey, what happened to the Blue Marvel? And we should have. There should be a lot more characterization of the lead character in the lead character's first appearance. Unfortunately, we just don't get that here. I can't really recommend the series, like I said, but the first issue is okay. I like the last part. The first half sucked. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to click like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you haven't done that already. And if you don't mind helping out the channel, go on over to Ko-Fi, drop $1 in the till, and helps keep the lights on. Also, if you like to like the video, by all means, click on one of these boxes that are popping up around here and check out one more of our videos. Thank everybody who's already done that, and to everyone, all of the true believers, thank you very, very much for watching.